Hello and welcome to Move the Line, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm Ryan Noonan, back week 14, joined here as always by the red. Are you? I don't know. Are you so hot that it's white hot? Like what's more hot? Is it white hot or red hot? Because whatever
I
that
think
is,
white hot. Yeah, white hot is
right?
hotter. Yeah.
Yeah, that's been your NFL betting season. It's been really exciting. Like I felt like last year, I morphed our Discord into a defensive-minded, tackle prop betting machine, and now you've warped everyone into this. Like everyone's just talking about they're just talking about unders. You've shifted the matrix in the Discord because you've been absolutely killing it. What's going on, buddy?
Yeah, not much. I trying to figure out reasons about why I'm doing better, and I think a lot of it's luck, to be honest. But I was thinking about it last year, how many times that I lost an under in the last 2 minutes of a game, which obviously you're gonna lose unders more at the end of the game than the beginning of the game. But there was just every week it felt like 2 to 3 plays where it was oh, this guy caught a 40-yard pass on the last drive, or something like that. That just hasn't happened this year. And so if that stuff's not happening, unders are just going to win at a crazy rate. I think I've also improved my process, getting to talk with you, Stu, Hunter, Jake every week. That's been super helpful, and a couple other things. But yeah, I'm over 30 something units. So I've already had my best year in NFL betting publicly ever. And we're only in week 14. So hopefully can keep adding to that. And we have a futures portfolio that's looking solid. We can talk about a little bit of that actually, because I do want to touch on a little bit real quick on the MVP race, because the odds are getting out of whack. So I don't know if you have any thoughts here. I know we said we were going to dive into the games, but now you got me thinking about because I did play Jalen Hurts MVP before the season.
I'm always ready to talk futures, and even though we didn't plan it out and we don't have necessarily well-crafted thoughts or extra research, I think they're fun markets to navigate, especially we touched on maybe next week, because we'll get through the buys. Everyone will kind of be dealing with the same amount of games played. We won't have anything like that. We'll be dealing with it is the stretch where these things are won. These things are decided. We touched on this since September. These things are interesting to track. We obviously did preseason content around it, and I even said at the time, it's kind of like preseason content. It's not necessarily a great time to jump into the futures market because they are so narrative driven in December, in this last home stretch we're kind of entering. So yeah, I mean, runaway favorite, Josh Allen at this point. You're typically not laying juice, even in the MVP market very often this early in December. That's where we're at right now. You've been making the case, banging the drum for Jalen Hurts, kind of with a long position thought of the Eagles being, real viable contender to be the number one seed in the NFC. Obviously, him being a driving force behind that. We've pushed back on that a little bit because Saquon's been such a massive piece of that. Not that Saquon necessarily had a path to MVP, but maybe he does. Maybe that could be part of your discussion here as well, because it felt like he was sucking some of the Hurts value out. He stayed stagnant while Saquon continued to climb. But obviously last week too, with Lamar losing, shifted things a little bit. And obviously a nice win, solidifying the division for the Bills. But yeah, take it wherever you want.
Yeah, I was going to say that I feel like the process on kind of our thoughts initially around Jalen Hurts MVP are panning out. The Eagles are dominating. They're winning games. They're scoring plenty. Their metrics are all good. But it's just all become through Saquon and not through Jalen Hurts. And so that has resulted in Saquon being plus 350 to plus 500, which is about where I thought Jalen Hurts would be. Instead, Jalen Hurts is 60 to 1 because he hasn't had to throw. And I mean, that's a problem. If you're not going to ever score ever, I mean, the last week was the week, the Ravens game was what I thought, the Ravens are going to push them. Jalen Hurts is going to come out of his shell a little bit. It'll be, maybe 300 yards, 3 total touchdowns, 1 or 2 on the ground. That's a statement game. I mean, they just handed the ball off, and that was it, because they didn't need to do anything else. That is not going to win Jalen Hurts an MVP. I think Saquon is very live. I mean, the next stretch of games is very winnable, and he could run for his prop this week is 113 yards against Carolina. That's one of the highest props I can remember ever, outside of, I think, Derrick Henry, Titans Derrick Henry a couple of years ago was in the high 105, 108, around that range. I don't know if he ever got to 113, to be honest. So
his prop is below his season average in the softest possible matchup.
Yeah.
So like as wild as this prop is, it's hard to think of a scenario where against the Panthers with their run defense right now that he doesn't become a massive, massive focal point. But yeah, that's the problem. Is I think your process on Hurts was really, really solid. I thought that at the time, and even that number hung out there for a little bit longer than I thought we thought it would. Now it's drifted the other way because of just kind of the shift of what's happened in the market.
Yeah, I think it just is what it is. Like, I mean, did I add more at 100-1? Yeah, of course I did. I mean, I like got to 100-1 like last week on FanDuel. If for some reason Saquon gets hurt or Jalen Hurts, starts playing better, or like, for some reason they're forced to throw ever in any of these games, I think that is a legit shot still. And Josh Allen plays the Lions coming up again.
Yep.
Like Brock Purdy was minus 350 last year, something like that, and just blew it because he had like the worst game ever against the Ravens. And then like his odds literally mid-game shifted from being a minus favorite to a plus favorite and then not winning the award. We saw prior to this, Jalen Hurts was actually the MVP favorite, then got injured the last 2 weeks and didn't win. Patrick Mahomes wins. Like that, like this looks right now like Josh Allen's award. If Josh Allen gets injured or doesn't play well against the Lions, the narrative is going to shift like that, and the media will forget and just be like, "Oh, who's done it for me lately?" I mean, yeah. So I don't know. I wouldn't lay minus 225. Josh Allen looks good right now for MVP, but again, these things just like change unbelievably quick. So I'm not ready to lay any juice.
So looking at it now, right? Josh Allen, then obviously he dropped down to Saquon. Lamar's fallen off, but he's still between 850 and 11. Jared Goff still hovering around a bettable number, I would think 11, 15 on FanDuel. You drop down to Mahomes, 25 is a nice number on DraftKings. Is there, based on the current board, not willing to lay Josh Allen money at all, and knowing maybe we're dead on Jalen Hurts? Is there anything else that's of interest to you at current numbers?
Oh man, I mean, not like if the Packers won out, would it be crazy for Jordan Love? I mean, would that be like? I mean, they probably wouldn't even win the division. They have the Lions this week, right?
Yeah, I mean, if they win out, it's a pretty nice stretch. I mean, Detroit, Seattle on the road are the next two. Then they got New Orleans in the middle. Then they have two more in the division. They go at Minnesota, home to Chicago. So those are important games for them, and they could win out. And I mean, Detroit would have to probably lose again, though they would have. I don't know, depending on the differential in the conference, because they would have basically split the series against Detroit in terms of winning the division. But yeah, I mean, they get the number one seed. They need Minnesota to scuffle as well, on top of beating Minnesota the one time. But yeah, I mean, it's something.
I mean, 80-1, like I think crazier things have happened. I'm still not super interested, like the Lamar Goff tier, to be honest. And I worry there's a little bit of like award fatigue with Mahomes, but at the same time, like they just keep winning. So like, what if Josh Allen stumbles and maybe Saquon is just like fine down the stretch? Like, do they just give it to Mahomes? Like, just because he won like every game? I mean,
the challenge with Josh Allen is that the finish, right? So they play the Rams this week. We'll touch on that game. Then they go next week to Detroit, which is obviously a very interesting game. Then they're kind of cruise control, right? Does that hurt him from an MVP standpoint? It's New England and the Jets at home, week 18 at New England. Maybe he's playing for that, right? Because they still actually have a path to the number one seed through Kansas City. So like the Bills still have something to play for, but does like Allen really not having to push anything passing wise in 4 out of the next 5 games? Is that kind of working against him a little bit? It could be too, right? He's going to shift into this like Jalen Hurts territory where they're going to go massively run heavy. They've been massively run heavy for most of the year anyway. He's a part of that, as is Hurts, but does that hurt kind of the numbers that you would need to get there too? That's kind of the struggle, which is, I feel like he makes a ton of sense. He deserves to be the favorite. It's just really hard to suggest anyone bets that at 225 right now. So it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, we know that they want to like run the ball. I mean, we've said it every single time we break down the Bills. Like, if they can run the ball, they're going to just do that, and then let Josh Allen do whatever he wants, like when he needs to. They have gone pass heavy sometimes, but that's also been some of the games where it's kind of backfired. Like the Ravens game particularly was not good, and so I think that. Yeah, like I mean, like you said, like the Patriots down the stretch, like some other teams, like they could easily just run the ball. So yeah, I think that this week, or I guess next week, whenever they play the Lions, maybe 2 weeks from now, that's I mean, really like vital basically to his MVP talk here. So I don't know. It's not a market that I'm necessarily looking to get into, but I do think it's one that's interesting, and it's one that this year especially seems like even more fragile. Like it just seems super like very fragile because obviously Josh Allen's playing great, but again, like they could go run heavy and they could lose to the Lions, and that obviously both of those things hurt his case down the stretch. So I just don't know what the answer is. I don't know. Do you have any other like longer shot takes that make sense? I'm looking down the board. Like if the Bengals were going to make the playoffs, I think Joe Burrow would be great, but like they're not going to make the playoffs. So
they're not going to make the playoffs anymore. Yeah, that is if the fever dream has died for sure. After last week, they needed to get that done. Pushback. We're poking a hole on Josh Allen with the thought of them losing at Detroit.
Yeah, what if they win?
Well, what if Detroit wins? Is that bode well for Jared Goff, who at 15, again, we still have the bugaboo, which you called out this summer. We have a pending road game against the Bears in weather, basically the only game all season where we thought, Goff is at home all year. The only game that possibly could have bad weather, cold, small hands Goff in Chicago in December. But does that bode well for him, right? If Goff plays well, they knock off the presumed MVP favorite. They solidify the number one seed, start to look like they're solidifying the number one seed in the NFC, right? Hold off a really hot Eagles team. Does Jared Goff start to continue to make some sense at 15, which is kind of where he's been hovering for most of the season?
Yeah. He has some of the same Jalen Hurts issues with like, sure. They run the ball so well. But he also has been throwing significantly more and been playing better on that, even when they haven't had to. So yes, I think it helps. Also, Chicago's defense is basically taking a nosedive just because they're so beat up. Like they just haven't been nearly as good. And I mean, they haven't been a good run defense all year, and their pass defense has gotten a good bit worse, I would say, the last couple of weeks, just with how beat up they are. So
for sure,
like the pathways that I thought of the Bears being like a good defense and like kind of maintaining that are just making less and less sense. So it's kind of like on a weather basis now at this point. Do you know what day that they play or like what week they play? The weather in Chicago is already taking a turn for the worse. And we're looking at, it's going to be 5 degrees. It's going to be single-digit degrees for the entire month of December in Chicago.
Tomorrow gets pretty brutal. It's week 16. So we're 3 weeks out, including this week. So yeah. Forecast
so
cold.
6 degrees, low of 0, and that's without any wind. So we're probably looking at negatives with the wind. I mean, Goff's just not going to throw. Like that's like, if he does throw, just need to put an alert in my phone right now. Bet Jared Goff unders at open. I don't care what you can give it to me like 175. It's probably still a good look under.
Goff, no matter what. Just put in the notes.
I got the yellow sticky note on my wall. Yeah. I don't have any Post-it notes because I'm not a boomer, but maybe I can go to one of your guys' houses. You got any
Hey, I'm a boomer. I'm a boomer, but I showed you last week. Even I had a Gibbs no matter what note to myself, but it was digital. It was in the spreadsheet.
You did, and it won. It won without it with him having 4 yards in the second half or whatever.
Yeah, like 6 carries, and we won Gibbs no matter what. But yeah, I have as a boomer definitely the boomer of the show comfortably. I've moved. Don't keep notebooks anymore. It's definitely been something that I've done in the past, but everything is digital now for sure. But Goff would be the only one, right? Because like if the whole for Josh Allen is a loss to Detroit, that also helps Goff, and he's in the mix. Schedule for the Lions is kind of interesting to finish out. Green Bay, obviously, this week they host Buffalo. Then back-to-back on the road, Chicago and San Francisco. That San Francisco game, obviously, a little less interesting, but obviously they still have some teeth, depending on who's healthy and who's playing there. Then a Week 18 game at home against Minnesota, which Week 18 gets wonky depending on who needs what and things like that. So definitely some things that can be decided. It's just one of those things where like, how do we reconcile Detroit in the awards market? If they end up going 16-1, they probably, even with high expectations, need to be represented somewhere. I know that, Dan Campbell as coach of the year is viable for sure. But again, the pushback on Campbell for coach of the year has always been, well, the expectations were high, right? So like coach of the year has been an award that's been increasingly given to a coach who's exceeded preseason expectations. So that's a challenge there too. So look, there could be holes in some like narrative award basis, right? Like we could have a running back win MVP. We could have like teams not represented. We had the Browns way overrepresented last year, right? Like those things can shift and start to happen. So following into some of these like just preconceived notions of what the award markets always are because they've been that way for the last couple of years might be a blind spot to the market and might be a way to have opportunities. So as of now, I'm not super interested in anything. It maybe be Goff other than Josh Allen. I'm not laying -2.25 on Josh Allen now, but I played so well. I do think just like the consensus of the national sports voting media is that Josh Allen is really well perceived. He's easy to cheer for. Buffalo's been, in the mix, and he's been very much a part of that. They just won their 5th straight division, but they haven't really broken through. Like wanting to award them for some of that, I think is gets into voters' head. That's why there is Mahomes fatigue. That's why there is Lamar fatigue, even though they're playing well and they have a case. It's like, can the Chiefs blow anybody out? Right? Like Mahomes isn't. There's no gaudy numbers for Mahomes. There's also voter fatigue, just fatigue with Mahomes in general, which is 1,000% not fair. But we saw this historically with like Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, who just couldn't win awards unless they had these historically outlier seasons above their high level of their baseline expectation. I don't know that that's necessarily what we're seeing from Kansas City, even though they're 11-1. But it's probably Goff would be the other one for me. But interesting discussion for sure. I think your Hurts process was really strong, even though it's not going to win.
Yeah, it sucks, but it is what it is. And last point that I'll make on this awards process here. I mean, after, for comeback player of the year last year, after we saw a guy literally die on the field, be resurrected, and then play and not win the award to a guy who just came off the couch and just ripped it for like 3 games. I just be careful laying any juice. Like, be careful out there, folks, because we have no idea about what, is going on in voters' heads. So.
Comeback Player of the Year award is the worst award there is. I think it's probably still the worst, even though they tried to put some like parameters around what it is that you can vote for, but it's still a voter. It's like a suggestion. It's like, like a stop sign. Like, we would like you to stop here. Someone's still driving the car. They still have to make the choice to actually stop. So we'll see what happens with that. I mean, Hamlin didn't play last year. Now it's funny. He's actually playing and playing well. In a good starting for a really good defense that's performing well, whereas last year he couldn't get on the field at all. So it was really hard to give him an award.
13-1. I mean, 15-1 right now on MGM. I mean,
for comeback player of the year. Can you come back from dying 2 years ago and not playing the year before?
Is that in the guidelines?
I don't know the guidelines. Yeah, I don't know.
Did they have that spelled out?
I didn't read the bylines. I feel like that's the small print for sure. Yeah, I don't know. That award sucks. It's just a weird award. I still same argument for the defensive player of the year is the Josh Allen thing. I don't think TJ Watt is someone that you should be laying -220, -250 on. But at the same time, a lot of the other contenders aren't really on playoff teams. Myles Garrett, not going to the playoffs, so you can get a big number on him on FanDuel, but FanDuel's priced it correctly. Right? He's just doesn't have a shot to win the award. They're not a playoff team. Xavier McKinney, interceptions are fantastic, but like Kirby Joseph has just as many as Kirby Joseph, 17-1. No, he seems like if you're just going to give it to the guy who leads the league in interceptions, you'd probably want to go down the board and sprinkle on Kirby instead in case he runs hot. I still think Danielle Hunter is viable. Chris Jones is interesting. That could be a path to Kansas City getting some acknowledgement for their season. 22 available on FanDuel, but not something I'm dying to get to. But just another spot where just wait and see what happens down the stretch. Don't go laying, throwing TJ Watts, Josh Allen parlay, the first week of December, thinking that, you're gaming the system there. I don't even know if you could parlay those, but if someone wants to parlay anything, they should be able to. I mean, the books should know that. They should. I don't know why they won't let people get down on
FanDuel randomly lets you. Like, it's like sometimes they let you, sometimes they don't. Throughout the offseason too, they just like randomly turn it off and on. That would not be advisable. But I'm sure people are going to do it anyway. So
yeah, someone heard that right now and they're like, I'm going to go do that. Yeah,
I can get even money on Allen and Watt. I mean, it's a new ETF. This is easy.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll wait and see. We'll dive in a little bit longer next week. We'll kind of tackle all the awards, see if there are any futures that tickle the fancy of the other, and see where we're at. Again, we're on the other side of the bye, and again, like there will be things that happen this week that change thoughts and narratives around that. If all of a sudden the Rams upend the Bills, and all of a sudden that might shift a little bit if Josh Allen struggles, throws a pick or two, and they can't get a win there in LA. So. All right. We'll remind folks that we have 2 episodes of Move the Line each week. You can listen to Move the Line wherever you listen to podcasts. You can watch along live with us on YouTube on the 4for4 Bets YouTube channel. You get a betting subscription if you want to get access to everything that we do at 4for4. Again, no matter what you're doing in the speculation space all season long, 4for4.com/plans. The betting sub gets you access to all of it, gets you in the Discord. You want to tail all those unders, those sweaty unders that Connor is putting out in cashing at a crazy rate. Fun way to watch football suddenly. If people are, or if you don't watch football, it's probably even more fun because watching the unders, personally, I find to be just completely insufferable. Now, I bet like a tackle under, like I don't want to watch that game, especially if like a middle linebacker that plays every snap, like get off the screen. It is a brutal, brutal watch. So if you like to just bet, not watch football, unders, totally for you. Jump in the Discord, 4for4.com/plans. You can scoop it up for a discount already on the site, and you can use any of our partners as well. Rebet is a great way to take access of that too. If you have been hanging out with us, have questions, let us know. We'd love to share more information there. All right, Connor, let's get into some of the games here. Let's bring up Profit X as we've been sharing that of late. It is mind-blowing in a way when you kind of look at some of the juice that we have to lay on some of these books compared to what we have over at Profit X, which is another one of our partners. She's going to bring on someone from the company to talk a little bit more in depth about it next week, share some of the thoughts on what's going on over there, because we're really excited about it. If you're not familiar, Profit X is a sports exchange, which is very prominent overseas. It is peer-to-peer instead of you versus the house, so that massively reduce the VIG that you have to pay. So you're basically, 3% from net winnings instead of the 10 to 20% juice that you're laying on a standard line, which is absolutely wild. And then, you're basically just need someone to pick up the other side. So it's a losers pay winners kind of scenario. You just need someone to take the other side of your action. And the wins come in form of the price. You get to pay or not pay elsewhere. So Connor, anything to add to Profit X?
Yeah, 2 other things, I guess, just available in over 40 states. So again, if you don't have a sports book, I was telling Paulson today, I was like, hey, you should download one of these sweepstakes apps and, preferably one of our partners that we actually think are good. Because you can use them in, states like California, Florida, other places. So definitely recommend that. Also for any like top-down bettors or anyone like looking for like to ARB, this is a great spot. They consistently have like prices that are just different. And so that can help you just like get more down, and like there's good liquidity on a lot of these things. So if that's kind of your MO, I know a lot of people got limited other books. So this is like a good spot, I think, to do that as well. If you're just looking to ARB, because they don't care. They just want action because you're taking someone else's money, not necessarily theirs. So
yeah, no limits. Limits are not a thing. You just need to be able to have someone scoop your action or be able to scoop enough action that's already laid. And you can like set your own line too, right? If you want to put out like what's on the screen now, if you're watching live, we have like the Falcons Vikings game. Like if it's a 4, and that's basically what we're seeing. We're seeing 5.5s out there, right? Like you can just put the 4 out there, right? Does someone want the other side of the 4 at plus money? Like, you can kind of create your own stuff and manipulate it here. You can see, there's a slider on the screen too, if you're watching live on YouTube, where you can click through and see what the prices are for, the different iterations of it. So it's like alt lines too, priced accordingly. So great way to get down, as Connor said, the ability to ARB. And again, if you've run into issues with limits, not an issue here, peer-to-peer. So really cool stuff. And props, the prop menu is expanding too. So I'll be interested to see how that continues to expand out here into maybe some other sports as we get outside the football season. So
for sure, I'll keep this up too while we're talking through some of the games here and just see what Profit X has, because there's actually one of the games coming up where they have I think the best odds in market by a lot. They usually have the best odds pretty much no matter what, but I think this one popped on my other screen here, my on screen. So,
all right, sweet. All right, we'll start here. We'll start with Atlanta and Minnesota. This is, you can see here, different pricing on Profit X. across domestics, 5.5, basically. Minnesota total between 45.5 and 46.5. So shop that around as well, where you're laying, minus 110 on the 46.5. If you want it over 46.5 on Profit X, that's plus money. Again, 10, 11 points, all that stuff adds up massively over the course of a season in terms of what you're having to lay there too. If the season ended today, which is, again, like, I punch myself in the face. It's really one of my least favorite things that's said in sports media. Like, it's usually done way too early. Like, oh, if the season ended today, it's like it's October. The season's not ending today. But as of now, this would be the 4-5 playoff matchup in the NFC. Of course, the season doesn't end today. A lot can change. A tough spot for Kirk Cousins going back home to Minnesota, coming off of a pretty horrific showing against the Chargers. The Chargers did nothing offensively. Falcons needed to just show a really small pulse, basically, to be able to get things done, and they could not do so. Scuffling a little bit here on the Atlanta side. 3 straight losses. Feels like, on paper, kind of like a buy low spot for the Falcons. Like, right, we're getting, the market sentiment's as low as ever. Minnesota just continues to win, come from behind last week at home against the Cardinals. But we have this variable where Brian Flores is obviously very familiar with Kirk Cousins, and what Cousins is struggling with doesn't seem to be necessarily something that's short-lived or matchup based. What are your thoughts here on Falcons and Vikings?
Yeah, I have a hard time with getting around to Atlanta here and Cousins, because we know that Flores is going to do a ton of zone blitzes. We know that Kirk is like super immobile. He looked pretty bad last week. He's kind of just like, his play is kind of like gone downhill, it seems like, throughout the course of the season. And I mean, part of it's just like the power that he's putting in his throws, like driving off of his feet. Like, it just doesn't look all the same, I think, as what we've known from Kirk before. I mean, it makes sense. He's coming off an Achilles tear at age, late 30s. So right now,
we were 0 for 2, by the way, in the marketplace for late 30s quarterbacks coming off of Achilles.
Yes.
Note to self, maybe we should discount that more moving forward, because Rodgers obviously not the same either.
Especially with offensive lines that are not playing particularly well. Like, I mean, if you're not going to get protection, or like not be able to get the ball out like super quick, which it seems like that's not, I don't know, it's just not as much of a thing anymore. Like, you need some mobility, and so that's a big issue. Obviously, the other Achilles tear too that we saw, J.K. Dobbins, he's now out for 4 or 5 games as well, and frankly played well for, like, I don't know what, half the season. So yeah, I think Achilles tears continue to be pretty much a death sentence. But in this spot here, I mean, Kirk Cousins, 5.7 yards per attempt to get zone blitzes, obviously not very good. And also Minnesota's run defense has played extremely well this year. So I worry that, like, if the Falcons can't run the ball, it puts a lot of pressure on Kirk Cousins against a team that's going to give him a lot of issues. Like, these 3rd and longs are just going to be brutal for a guy like Kirk. So I tend to like Minnesota here at 5.5. But interested to hear your thoughts here, if you think that Atlanta can hang around.
Yeah, it's a stay away from me, because I feel like it's a good situational spot where, like I said, the sentiment feels low, and it would be a good time to jump in on the Falcons. I'm worried. Did you see some of the next gen stat stuff on Cousins, like speed of his throw? Nothing touched or top 36 miles per hour against the Chargers on Sunday. Just like the pick 6 was everything was a touch pass, right? There's so much anticipation that there's like the inability to like jam it in to someone, which is just really, really hard to watch. That feels like a bad mix for what Flores is going to want to do here. So even though it feels like a spot that we should maybe be buying low a little bit on the Falcons, it's Vikings or nothing for me. Saquon's been awesome. Minnesota's run D has been terrific. They've allowed, like, I was looking to, like, last 5 games, they were allowing 31 yards per game on the grounds, which is it's really hard. I mean, that's a smaller sample, but it's not a nothing sample. It's a 5-game sample against some teams that can run the football. So they basically make you play with one hand tied behind your back, and now that other hand is Kirk Cousins. So that's just not a great place to be. So there'll be some passing volume. I think there'll be some prop avenues there to explore based off of how we think that game can go. But yeah, Vikings are nothing for me, even though it feels like the donkey square chalk side of it. You're probably best off taking some alts, right? Like Vikings minus 9.5 or something like that. Do we have anything like that? Any
You can get
alt action
six
at
minus
6?
6 for plus 102.
I don't hate that. I mean, that's not
I
far
don't.
off of where the market is anyway. Instead of like laying minus 115 or whatever, like you get plus money.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that's 6 plus 102 is not bad. I mean, there's a lot of good prices here. I mean, 5.5, even at minus 108 is pretty solid, I think, too. So yeah, I think all those are good. I think they're decent looks here. The over under specifically, I don't really have too much of a take just because I worry about Atlanta driving too many points here. But not sure I'm stoked to to bet the under here either because we've seen Darnold with time like play extremely well. The running game's looking pretty solid. So it's kind of just pass for me on the total.
Here's the other side. Now that you mentioned it too, it makes me a little concerned. Last week, the Cardinals got a ton of pressure against Sam Darnold, the highest pressure rate in the league. The Cardinals, who are like bottom 2 or 3 in pressure rate on the season. A lot of it was second level stuff, blitzing linebackers, blitzing safeties and corners. So that is something that Raheem Morris does like to do. So maybe under is a viable look here. Darnold's taking a ton of sacks. I think he's taking either the third or fourth most sacks. His pressure to sack rate is top 5. They like to bring Caden Ellis. They like to bring their linebackers from the Cardinals, or I'm sorry, for the Falcons. So maybe an under is a decent look in this spot, considering both teams might eat a bunch of sacks or have a bunch of pressure. Kirk does a great job of avoiding sacks, mostly because he just gets rid of the ball so fast. But that's how we get pick sixes and stuff. So that could be a killer to an under, but under is probably the right look.
Yeah, no, good call.
All right, next game has probably the most important game on the slate in terms of what happens moving forward from a playoff standpoint. Seattle is on the road in Arizona. Domestics, this is -2, maybe some plus money 3s moving out there as well. You have 44.5, 45.5 is the total. You can see here on the screen, Seattle +3, -120 at Profit X, which is very, very interesting. What's the 2.5 priced at? If you just click into that real quick. All right, Seattle +2.5 is +101, which is a great price. So again, like I said, impactful for what happens here in the playoffs because Seattle's playing really good football. If you look at PFF's playoff leveraged calculator type thing, Seattle has a 76% chance to make the playoffs with a win. A loss for Arizona slides them down to a 5% chance, basically. Then these teams, basically, Arizona's like a 50% chance, and then very much alive for the division. The division gets really murky with an Arizona win here. First meeting was just 2 weeks ago. It was a stinker, 16-6 in Seattle. Only offensive touchdown was a pick-6. Neither team managed to top 300 yards in total offense. And we've seen that kind of reflected in the market where the total kind of, 46 is kind of where it opened. And now we've seen it drive down 44.5, 45.5 in some spots here. Connor, I think you probably know my lean here, but what are your thoughts on Seattle and Arizona?
Yeah, I just want to keep buying Seattle. Like every week, I'm like, I don't know what it is about them, but maybe it's just like, I don't know. It's one of those things where like I'm just always intrigued. And like last week, I felt like they just were every bounce was not going their way for the first half of the game. Essentially, got special teams, I think, a little bit there as well. And then they ended up pulling it out just because I think they're a pretty good team. Their run defense does not really play as well as they had in previous weeks, which I thought was interesting. Brees Hall had a couple of nice rips up the middle. Now that being said, like they were kind of more in like usually having more obvious passing situations, but that's certainly a concern. James Conner kind of got back on track last week. Unfortunately, one of my few losses last week, but no, I think that this is, I don't know. I want to keep backing Seattle here. Arizona, if they can't get pressure again, I think Seattle could score even a little bit more, but Seattle's defense just looked so much better, so good against Arizona. Like it's tough for me to think about backing Arizona here. So, 2.5, 3 at -120. I don't think it's bad either. You're getting basically paying, compared to the market right now, the market at most domestics is -110. So, again, if for some reason you wanted the 3 really bad, you could get -120 here at Profit X.
What's my money line price if you drive down Seattle? Plus 130.
Yeah, plus 130.
That's beautiful. I think it's like plus 112 or something like that on DraftKings or shout out DraftKings, sponsor the show. Yeah, but yeah, plus 130 is pretty awesome. So that's where it is for me. Seattle. I still think that they're the better football team. Some Seattle to win the division. Futures feeling pretty live, obviously, with everything that's going on in San Francisco. Comparatively, with Arizona and the Rams, obviously not dead and very much not dead if Arizona wins this football game. But yeah, I'm bullish on Seattle. I was bullish on the coach coming in. The defense, I think, is gelling in a way that we maybe expected early in the season, and it makes sense in hindsight why it doesn't gel early. I continue to beat the drum on, I think, the linebacker shift here, basically, losing two mediocre, one okay, one mediocre linebackers and putting in two really strong run stopping, gap filling linebackers has been awesome for this team and has allowed them to, not have to play, Julian Love in the box a ton, right? You can keep him back and it can bolster your pass defense a little bit more because you didn't have to support the run so much with him and Jenkins and Kobe Bryant, all those guys. So yeah, I'm bullish on Seattle. I like the money line at plus 130. I think they're the right side here. And if you have any interest or you could still get down on some good Seattle to win the division, I think that's probably still the best look here. Seattle to win this division.
The Niners are just completely cooked at this point.
Cooked. On the schedule, they still have some games, right? Like Bears, Rams at Miami, Detroit at Arizona. Like considering everything that's going on there, like I don't know.
Yeah, I mean
they can go 3-2 there, but it's not great.
Does the division come down to like this game almost? I mean, both teams are plus 170, plus 180. Like Rams are plus 300, Niners 14-1. I mean, like I don't know, plus 170 doesn't seem like a bad price.
It does. I mean, the Rams have okay schedule, but again, they do play more division teams. Like the Seattle's done. Seattle does play. I think they play the Rams in the last week of the season. Yeah, they go to LA on week 18, but this is the end, right? Seattle's got a stretch where they play the NFC North. They get Green Bay and Minnesota at home, and then at Chicago. So tough stretch for Seattle in terms of opponents. That's probably why the market is where it is on them. But then again, they will have the edge in terms of tiebreakers against all those teams. And if they take care of business against the Rams in week 18, they'll have that one too. So
yeah, okay,
that's kind of it for them.
I like it.
Yeah, Seattle's aside, guys. All right, next, touched on Buffalo. Buffalo's on the road against the Rams, an important one for the Rams as well. We have basically in the market, let's see, we're at 4.5. 5 out there a little bit, total 49.5. Profit X, you could see those prices are much better. You can lay the minus 106 on the Bills there, minus 103 on the Rams, getting the 4.5. This is an interesting spot just in terms of what's going on with the Bills. Obviously, clinching the division last week, 5th straight AFC East, and egg on our face. Definitely looking for ways to get out of Buffalo winning the division, and they become the first team in the league week 13 to lock up the division, which is just absolutely wild. They still have something to play for, obviously. They're a game back of Kansas City for the top spot in the AFC. They won the head-to-head there, so they obviously have the tiebreaker, so they can't really take their foot off the gas this early, so they do have something to play for, but it's kind of human nature. Back-to-back weeks, they have a road game next week on the road in Detroit. It's a big game. Do they get caught looking ahead here against the Rams team that obviously is basically desperate to keep their hopes alive here? Thoughts on Bills and Rams?
Yeah, I have a tough time getting to the Rams because the Bills are just so much better in basically every facet of the game. I will say, I mean, the Bills' run defense has periodically had struggles throughout the year. Like they've also played very well at certain times, but they've also, been gashed a little bit on the ground. We see this Rams team, especially offensively, if they can get the ground game going, it opens up just like a million more things for Matthew Stafford and that passing offense to do virtually whatever. And I mean, could force this game into a shootout. Like that wouldn't be surprising to me. And that would, in my mind, that would be the path to them winning here. The other path would be, just getting a lot of pressure on Josh Allen. He hasn't necessarily been super pressure dependent specifically, but I do think that, especially with probably getting Dalton Kincaid back, getting Keon Coleman back, Amari Cooper and Khalil Shakir kind of round out like a, I don't know, ragtag bunch of like receiving group, I would say at this point. Like none of them are really all that good, but I think that they get the job done when Josh Allen is playing at the level he is. And their running game, I think, should have success here. So for me, it's kind of a stay away just for, like I think they're the better team, but they're on the road. And I do think that there's a path for the Rams to have some success offensively. It's just a question on how much. And if not, then I mean, Buffalo is going to win by a lot. So, I don't know. I think it's a tough game for me. And I want to go back to the futures conversation you had, though. Like we were excited to fade them a little bit, or I was excited to fade them a little bit. I think you were trying to kind of stay on them a little bit because they're one of the better teams. And it just reminds me every year, like there's a couple teams that there's a lot of projection involved, and the Jets were one of those teams that there was a lot of projection. You're like, oh, well, if Aaron Rodgers plays better and the offensive line, they signed all these guys and the defense was elite. So you can keep that. And these pieces just like one by one and falling apart or just never panned out. And so, again, it's just like a reminder that like, we know certain things are good. It's like the boat mixed mystery box Family Guy scene thing, and like literally like, the Bills are the boat, the mystery box is the Jets. And it turns out like, again, we should have just picked the boat. So
it was not a boat. Yeah. There was a lot of projection that was easy to, in hindsight, see.
Right.
Injuries, Hassan Reddick never really reports basically for the meaningful part of the season, or meaningful part of the season, other injuries that have happened. It's been kind of a mess there in Buffalo. Yeah, they lost some bodies, but Josh Allen is pretty damn good and a talent maximizer, and they just are hard to bet against. And we probably maybe shouldn't have in hindsight, considering where we're at now. They're and again a wagon down the stretch, especially if they have home field advantage there in the playoffs, which I think is going to be very, very interesting to watch. But I mean, the handicap here can come down simply to the Bills are one of the best teams at basically creating gaps to run in terms of like where they're at yards before contact. And the Rams are one of the worst defenses in terms of, yards, letting guys get a bunch of yards running downhill against them. Right. So they also get a ton of pressure. Josh Allen just is taking sacks at the lowest rate in the league. When the offensive line holds up pretty well, but even so, he creates him out of pocket is absolutely terrifying. So that's actually something that I don't think you necessarily want to see happen. He gets way more aggressive out of pocket too, in terms of like average depth to target and big time throw rate. So it's almost like one of those scenarios where do you really even want to bring a ton of pressure on him, because he becomes like this different monster when that happens. So Bills are nothing for me, even though the situation is probably tough. And I understand why situational bettors would probably want to back the Rams here, but I think there are just too many flaws in terms of the pressure that the Rams can, or the Bills can generate here, and the Bills' ability to run the football.
Yeah, we need a highlight reel of Josh Allen like rolling out and just like not throwing the ball yet, but just like pump faking a couple of times. And then just because his arm strength is so good, he can throw like off platform and like any point like 40 yards downfield. So like if anyone gets open at all, he can just like plant one foot and just rip it, anytime. So he's done such a good job of that this year. And it leads to some chaotic Josh Allen plays sometimes, but in the past and this year, it's all just been like money. He's finding some random guy open in his zone, like, 10 seconds after the play starts.
Yeah. How far we've come on the Josh Allen analysis is pretty wild.
Yeah, I got some tweets to delete that I should have deleted, but I'm not going to, just because I hope I'm just shocked that no one hates me enough to go back and find some old receipts and resurface them. I guess I have the tweet muted, so I don't know if anyone has ever, to be honest. But,
okay, smart. Smart.
Yeah, I muted it when I started getting like threats in my DMs about that. So that was kind of the end of that tweet for me. But no, I'm just surprised that no one's like, tried to tag me in something else and be like, look at this moron, So maybe I need to be more controversial,
Yeah. The Bills Mafia, they're passionate, right? They'll be like the first ones to donate to charity, right? You remember that with like the Andy Dalton stuff in the past. I think they did something with like Travarius Ward lost his child. They played last week and like they raised a bunch of money for him, but they'll also go to bat passionately for their people too. So there's a lot of passion in Western New York for their football team, and that Josh Allen slander not tolerated. That's for sure.
No, definitely not.
All right, next one. Chargers on the road in Kansas City. Domestics 4, basically. There's some 3.5s out there that are juicy, laying on the Kansas City side. Total between 42, 43.5. So you could shop that around. All similar, all a little bit under the key number there. If you kind of look here on Profit X, some better numbers. You can get plus 102 to take the Chargers plus money. You lay 109 on Kansas City here to lay the 4. Same thing, the total is pretty nice too in terms of the price points there as well. These teams obviously met early in the season, back in week 4, kind of a dud as well, 17-10. Again, another close game because that's all the Chiefs are allowed to do. Chargers really struggled to win the ball in that game too, totaling just 55 yards on 24 carries. Now the run game has lost its way a little bit, although they were running not well in that game, but overall pretty well to start the season. The J.K. Dobbins loss has been kind of a struggle. Again, they should not have won that football game last week against Atlanta. Puts a lot of pressure on Justin Herbert. Seemed to be up to the task. The Ladd McConkey's been playing great. He's dinged up a little bit. Be interested to see how that affects things here too. Little shift on the offensive line on the Kansas City side that I want to see if that sticks too. They benched left tackle Wanye Morris in the fourth quarter, who was getting absolutely torched by Max Crosby and Tyree Wilson. And they kicked Joe Thuney out to tackle. I don't know if that's something that they want to do, but we'll see if that holds. I mean, Chargers are healthy at edge. Mack and Bosa have missed some time this season, but they both are back and playing well. They have 4 different guys that they can rotate at edge because of the offensive line issues. We've seen a higher sack rate for Mahomes this season. Interesting game here, Connor, considering all that's going on. Chargers and Kansas City. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it was kind of an ugly game last time, as you mentioned. I mean, the Chargers, so that was when the Chargers were still in their era of we're going to run the ball no matter what, which is
Correct.
The first 5-6 weeks, and they were just jamming it. I mean, they ran 24 times for 55 yards. They averaged 2.3 yards per carry, 20 carries combined from just Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, and they did not combine for more than 60 yards, or it was 51 yards they combined for. So really bad, really, really bad. And so that's just not their identity at all, though. They've shown the ability to go more pass heavy. They've shown the ability to and that I think lines up with some of the Chiefs' weaknesses. They're a great run defense. Their pass defense has been very much fine for a good bit now. I mean, we saw Aiden O'Connell rip them for something. We saw Bryce Young rip them for something. I mean, these guys are generally not good quarterbacks. They're playing better, but I mean, they're not good quarterbacks. And Justin Herbert, I think, is played pretty well for most of the season. Ladd McConkey is huge, though. I had an over teed up potentially on Justin Herbert's passing yards. But I mean, Ladd McConkey is so important. Last week, it was a 50% target share, I believe, for Ladd McConkey. It was every play possible. They were just targeting him. He's just always open, which is great. But the rest of the receiving core sucks. I mean, Quinn Johnson is horrible. Josh Palmer is basically just a clear out guy. And Will Dissly's been a nobody his entire career and has a couple good games this year. But I think Dissly and McConkey are probably going to be the 2 focal points here. And I think they get it done. So I don't know. I like the Chargers here. Plus 4.5, I think is interesting. Unsurprisingly, I'm backing the Chargers again. But they just keep winning. I don't know. It just keeps working out. So yeah, I'm into it.
I think it's the side. I mean, getting the full 4, especially here at Profit X, where you can get the plus 102. I mean, that feels like a great look. I mean, I would even kick it down. What's 3.5, right? Because at that point, 4 is kind of not necessarily dead. 4s can be important nowadays, but yeah, plus 1. Okay, I'd probably just keep the 4 because you're still getting the plus money.
Yeah, because you get plus 100 for. I mean, you can get plus 100, plus 102 for over $300 of liquidity here. So not a ton, but I mean, enough for almost every better. Normal better.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
that's not bad.
If you want more, if you want 500, you can get minus 101. So
yeah, get in there. It's the beauty of this. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think the Chargers are probably aside, even with some of the questions. We're early in the week, so we can see how that shakes out. But yeah, it's just hard to see what's going on in Kansas City and how this really changes. They miss more. I was looking into it earlier today, actually. Jalen Watson was really good for them at corner, and they've started to mix match. They've had moved to a lot of Nassim Johnson. They kind of benched him last week too. He has not been playing well, so I feel like they don't really know what they want to do. I think the loss of L'Jarius Sneed, not just what he was doing on the field, but what allowed them to do with Trent McDuffie, they've been able to shift him. I don't think he's as comfortable with what his role has been this year too. So everything's kind of slid down, but their completion rate over expectation, the yards per game, everything without Jalen Watson in the lineup has been significantly worse. So without him, that seems to be an important player for them. So hard to be bullish on the Chiefs passing defense, which has been, such a strong focal point of that defense for the last couple of years. So Chargers getting the full 4, especially at plus 102, I think is the side here. Probably another under spot too, especially if you can. What's 44.5? What can I get in the action on? Am I paying out the nose? Okay.
You want under?
Yeah, I had one under, but that's
minus 150. That's too much on a total, I think.
I agree.
But yeah, it's looking like this is the juice on the unders. It seems like a lot of people want the unders here.
Yeah.
What's the market that you say? 1 or 43?
I mean, yeah, it's all over a little bit. Like FanDuel's 40 or DraftKings 42.5. Yeah. Yeah, there's some 43s out there. So
if you want the regular 42.5, I mean, minus 104 is pretty good. That's like minus 110 everywhere else. But any of the alts, a little pricey, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I get why people would lean that way too. So yeah, I'm with you. Chargers or nothing. I think that makes some sense too. All right. You touch on Thursday night game. We typically don't, but the Thursday night is a good one. Or if you want to touch on any other games, obviously the one of the better games on the slate with Green Bay on the road in Detroit. Another rematch from a couple of weeks ago. 3.5 out there too. Just an important game. I mean, as good as Detroit's been, Green Bay and Minnesota very much still in the mix in terms of where this division stands. Detroit won the first one. That was the week after Jordan Love was coming off of the groin injury in Jacksonville. We weren't even sure if he was going to play. That game, in terms of like, if you look at the box score, you'd be surprised that there was a 10-point Lions win, because Green Bay, it basically dominated a lot of the metrics in the game. Pick 6 in that game from Jordan Love was really important there too. But do you have any thoughts on how that game's going to play out, or anything else on the board you want to touch on?
Yeah, I think you might be. I'm interested to hear your thoughts here. So I keep our Slack chat open during all the time, and so I got a notification mid-show.
It was buzzing, and I closed it.
That DJ Reader is out for the Lions.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that they are down to, I think, just Aleem McNeil, and then just like a bunch of bums basically on the defensive line. Like they got, basically no one. I mean, their whole linebacking core is basically beat up too. Like they're just in a really rough spot up front. And so Stu, Monotone hit us up and said he was taking Josh Jacobs over 68. So I pinged, said I joined that. So I like Josh Jacobs over. It's at 71 now, 72. I think it's still fine. 69.5. It looks like in some places still. I mean, that's, in my opinion, that's great. He had 93 last time against him. Like, this Lions defense and all the metrics are like top 5, right? But when you're beat up, like it's just different. Like we see it all the time. If injuries matter so much, and so like relying just on the metrics, like if you don't have the context of like who, like, them missing players, then I think that's why the line was the way it was, and should probably be in the mid 70s. I think, especially like, I think they're gonna keep this game close. Like you mentioned, Jordan Love kind of just returning, like, again, through a costly pick 6. I think that they'll probably keep the game close enough so that they can run the ball. So that's probably my take on that. And I'd probably play Packers plus 3.5 if I had to pick a side. I'm not sure that I love the Packers necessarily overall as a team. I just think this could be a good enough spot for them.
Yeah, I think healthier Love too, comparatively versus the last time too, makes a ton of sense. It's an important game. I think it's going to be really interesting to watch. I think the Lions are a unit, and when they're forced to have to like score and keep up with the team too, we just haven't seen that very much. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens here too. But this was actually, I picked this for the NFC Championship game. I thought these teams could both be here, so I'm not ready to rule out the Packers. Tracking well. It's live. It's better than the Texans Chiefs, which I think is not tracking quite as well given what's going on with the Texans. But yeah, I mean,
I had the Jets, honestly.
You had the Jets.
Fucking Jets.
But you had the Eagles, so that's a good one.
Yeah, it is.
That was Jets. One. Yeah, I think you were Jets Eagles in the Super Bowl, but I think you were Eagles Niners. So, which I understood. I mean, not picking the Niners felt awful at the time, but that's not worked. But yeah, I mean,
it only took their entire team getting injured. Every single good player, and Debo's running like a slug. Debo's just like he's chubby. It
is a really rough defensive line for the Lions right now. Zadarius Smith trade was nice for them, and he's playing good football off the edge, not a run stopping guy at all. He's a get up the field, disrupt the pocket. I'd pay really good money if you can name one other defensive lineman outside of DJ Reader.
No, I mean, nothing left. I mean, there's nothing. I was looking at the thing today when we were talking about it yesterday. It was like, there was like all the names crossed off of like who's out. It's like 8 guys or like 9 guys in the front 7.
Yeah. Yeah. Even the linebacker core is, I mean, they did scoop up my boy, David Long from Miami. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets in the mix. But, guy in Miami was trying to keep off the field on passing downs, but a good run stopper for sure. But last week, outside of Ali McNeil and DJ Reader, the next guy that led in snaps was Mekhi Wingo, which if you'd asked me 3 weeks ago who he even played for, I would have lost that bet for sure. So Patrick O'Connor, Broderick Martin, just a bunch of dudes that do not get regular NFL snaps. They're going to have to be playing probably a decent amount here against the Packers on Thursday night. So tough spot for Detroit.
Is Mekhi Wingo playing? Is he like?
Yeah.
Also,
early downs.
Third game in 12 days for the Lions.
It's tough.
Not great. Not great.
Well, what's the Packers? Because these teams both played on Thanksgiving.
Right. Yeah, for sure. But I think the Packers seem like they're at least a little more healthy, right?
No, the Packers are more healthy for sure.
Yeah.
No, the injuries, and we still don't know what's going on with Carlton Davis, if he's going to play for sure, because they've had to, dust off some, Amik Roberts, or Robertson and Kendall Valor in the back or secondary as well. Guys that they don't necessarily want to play either. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what's going on there, but I think you're probably taking some plus money on the Packers. And I think your prop there is probably a pretty good look. You guys definitely got the best of the number.
Yeah, it was just, we talked about it before. If like, it was like basically if any other defensive linemen were out, if you have Reader and McNeil, you probably stop the run, but you're not going to get any pressure. But only one of them, I mean, it's kind of tough to do anything, I feel like.
Yeah. The Reader, they've been getting, that's where their pressure's coming from too, is because that's all they have left is it's coming from the middle, which is, it's tough because that's actually Green Bay's best thing. They are their offensive line is like the best pass blocking offensive line in the league. Love not taking many sacks. So yeah, he's gonna have time. Maybe some chunk plays in the passing game too. Something Detroit has not been giving up a ton of lately, but maybe if Carlton Davis is out. Okay. Warming up to some Packers there. Maybe the total makes a ton of sense because if you get that team like pressed a little bit, then all of a sudden they gotta let loose a little bit. So yeah. Any other games that you wanted to highlight or touch on?
I thought Bears-Niners was interesting. Bears opened at like 5.5. I thought that was kind of interesting. At this point, 4, I think I would still have a little bit of interest, not too much. The Jets, I think the Dolphins blow the Jets out. I mean, the Jets defense has been so bad since Salah left. Sauce Gardner's out. He was playing terrible anyways. He's more interested in his golf game, it seems like. But I mean, I think the Dolphins are just going to drop like 30 on him basically at this point because the Jets are shelling themselves. And I mean, the offense hasn't really looked all that good either. So I think that's kind of an interesting spot here for the Dolphins as a team that they were getting a slight discount on because they haven't really won a lot of games. They didn't really look great in the cold. I think that Tua played actually mostly fine, like to be clear.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, he threw for like 300 something, I think, or like, 40 completions. A lot of that came in the second half. Some of it was in garbage time, obviously, but like the main narrative was that the cold impacted Tua and the cold did not really impact Tua. The team was just worse than the Packers. Like, I don't know. I mean, they're not like a power running team. So that definitely hurts a little bit in the cold. And I mean, again, the Packers is a better team. So I don't know. It was kind of like, in my mind, that's what played out more than like the Tua cold narrative.
I agree. I'd love to fade the Giants. I just can't do it with the Saints team on the road. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I joked, like I watched watching that game. Like that was the offense that I quarterbacked in 6th grade. That Derek Carr offense. It was just like either moonball or check down, kind of what we thought the Russell Wilson Steelers offense would be. But like take a couple deep shots, but then it's like now Taysom Hill's out. Like what are they? It's going to be just a ton of Kamara targets and maybe Jawan Johnson targets. And like, I don't know. So I would love to fade the Giants without, Dexter Lawrence and some injuries in the secondary and injuries in linebacker. But like, I'm not laying money on Derek Carr on the road. That's for sure. So maybe there'll be some other spots to fade the Giants. It's not this week.
Yeah. I mean, the Saints right now, it's like probably the worst or one of the worst receiving cores in the league currently what they're trotting out, and a bad offensive line that's like kind of beat up. So, I mean, what are you supposed to do? It's like, there's not really, I don't even blame them too much. They just like don't have players, it's like, what do you really even do with that? Hand the ball to Kamara. Maybe Kendrick Miller gets more involved this week.
Kendrick Miller's supposed to be back this week. Yeah, let's see.
He looked kind of good the last time we saw him. I don't know. It's really tough.
Tough one. Yeah. It's a spot that I'm like, oh, the Giants are in trouble. I'm like, oh, they play the Saints. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm gonna hold that one in the holster for maybe another week where we can buy low on the Giants. But again, hard to buy low on the Giants when they're just low. That's just kind of where they're at. So, all right, buddy, that's good for the week. Remind folks, come back on Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern for Prop Drop. Connor, myself, John Highslop, getting off the rails, ladders, alts, bets. Maybe Connor has some overs for us this week. Who knows? I think just shove it in Highslop's face. Just keep banging those unders. Stay on brand. Build that up. Don't capitulate to the man who wants the overs. We can lose his attention for a couple minutes every show. And then just have some guys for alts and some ladders for the Millie parlay. But do your thing, man. Keep cooking. So come back on Friday for that, folks. Make sure you tune into 4 for 4 bets on the YouTube channel. Remove the line wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out Profit X. Hopefully, if this is the first time you've seen it, there's no loopholes. This is just peer-to-peer, no limits, better vig, guys. I mean, especially if you're in one of the jailed states, like Connor mentioned, the big ones, Florida, California, Texas, spots where you cannot bet on sports. That's actually not really true with this sweepstakes loophole. So if you have questions, reach out to us directly and we'll help you get started. So for Connor, I'm Ryan. We'll see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.